But more importantly, the weather in Montreal looks perfect for what's about to happen.
Well, speaking of that, we have Chris Medland up in Montreal. You're going to join us here in a few minutes, hopefully with a microphone in hand, getting some interviews. Jonathan and Les, how are you boys?
Good. Looking forward to this. Because of yesterday's circumstances weather-wise, I think we've got a really interesting Grand Prix ahead.
Yeah,
Agreed.
definitely going to be good. It's great to be back in Montreal. You know, realize the last time they were there was 2019 when I was there reporting for Speed City. So
That's right.
that seems forever ago. And I'm glad, you can hear the excitement in everybody in the different interviews when they bring up being back in Montreal. A lot of them love this track, except for that one wall.
There's a few walls, but yes, that's the one, the wall of champions you're referring to.
Yeah.
And that's because every really good driver has hit it at some point. Last
all
corner.
the great names. I'm surprised they used to paint Wall of Champions on the wall.
Yeah.
Now they've got some promotion for the city of Montreal. I was very disappointed by that. I think they need to put a target on it and Wall of Champions, because as you say, all the best have hit it.
Well, I don't know. That might be a marketing stroke of genius. Look, somebody big's going to hit this wall. Let's paint the sign on right there.
I think before we get into it, can we just have a moment for Haas F1?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Best
I mean, that's the best
qualifying.
qualifying.
It is
Awesome.
best qualifying ever. And I don't care, rain or no rain, I'll take it no matter what.
And there's two reasons why it's one to celebrate. One, it was legitimate in the conditions. Two,
Yep.
and that's a leveler. But two, Magnussen has been on 4 more seasons, and Mick Schumacher has woken up to the challenge that Guenther said, which is stop crashing my cars and costing me money. And Mick has come good. And the question is, how long can they hold on? If you remember, I think it was Germany last year. Magnussen got a 4th place, but couldn't stay there. But there's more chance here, and so I'm really excited for that.
And I thought that effort, good as it was kind of understated in the broadcast. Yeah, Alonso is out there doing fabulous things, and other guys who were supposed to be up front were having trouble. But I kept saying, look where the Haas guys are. Somebody talk about it.
Yeah, I'm going to have a word with Sam Collins. I'm appreciating his commentary, but I don't like his comment of the Italian American team.
Oh, I did hear him say that.
I'm like, what?
So what you talking about, Willis?
What you talking about, Willis?
Careful.
Well, let's be honest. Do we expect them to finish in those positions? And it would be wonderful if they did. But just listening to Fernando Alonso being asked about his P2 starting position, he said, well, look, realistic positions for our Alpine cars are 6th and 7th. We'll probably wind up there unless there's trouble for people ahead of us, in which case we'll take advantage. And I think that speaks to where the Haas team is. Will they finish there? Probably not, but there's every chance they could. And of course, for Mick Schumacher, it would be his first championship points, and he never needed them more than he does right now.
Yeah, and great news for Alpine. You saw the faces of all the team, the relief, and they deserve it. They've been working hard. They've been working on upgrades. They've been trying to get around, get the rules right, and they have. All right, the conditions played a part, but it's great to see Alonso up there. And I think there's some really good stories up and down the paddock.
Sure.
And by the way, for those who don't know or weren't watching pre-shows, that's the first time since 2012 that Alonso's been up there, and that's a guy who's taken
crazy.
2 years off Formula One. It's to see him that motivated and drive, and really, Jensen made a good point the other day. Is everybody was in the same car, you'd know which one Alonso was, because he just has a style like no one else and rags out the car. He reminds me a little bit of Senna's style of driving, in terms of it's smooth, but when he's on it, my word, he's risking it.
I've been wondering, and I should have checked this out, but I didn't do it. I'm sorry. Was 2012, was that the year in Germany when the famous phrase was uttered to Felipe Massa by Rob Smedley, the chief mechanic? Fernando is faster than you.
Yeah. I don't know for sure. I don't know,
but that's what I think of when I think of Germany.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Anyway.
Well, certainly know the phrase.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, the order that we're looking at with Alonso up there, Haas up there, I mean, it's just fantastic watching that qualifying in the rain yesterday. Bob, what else about it struck you?
Well, the cream floats at the top. We have 10 world championships in the top 4 positions. And just when we thought that Ferrari would be fighting with one hand behind their back because Charles Leclerc went through a complete power unit change, so he goes to the back, came out and did a lap that put him ahead of the other guy starting at the back, Yuki Tsunoda for AlphaTauri. But then Sergio Perez conveniently hit the turn 4 wall. So now you've got one Red Bull and one Ferrari up at the front, and the teammate cars coming from the back, which should be great fun to watch. And, credit Lewis Hamilton with all that team has been through in the first 8 races of this year. Here in the 9th, Hamilton got up there into a 4th position. And a lot of that, I think, is due to his experience and his driving ability in the wet, and the fact that car is fast, even though it beats the snot out of its drivers.
Yeah. Yeah, and an important race for Hamilton. I mean, you could almost, if the season were to continue as it has been for Hamilton, and it could do again today, he's going to lose some of that motivation, some of that mojo that makes Hamilton as special as he is. And I fear that, because I don't want to see any great champion kind of, I remember when Schumacher started driving for Mercedes, and we all went, oh, this is not how I want to see Michael finish his career. But the car got better and better, and he actually got better. But I think there was certain other circumstances going on with Michael at the time. But, and now look at Mercedes. But I remember you'll remember, Bob, when Mercedes were a joke almost. And everybody was like, well, why did you bother coming back to racing after 50 years?
Sure. Yeah, and why did Lewis Hamilton decide to go to that hangdog Mercedes team when he did?
Yeah, and that turns out to be a brilliant move.
All right, guys, I want to bring on Chris Medland. Looks like he has joined the call in Montreal. Chris, how are you?
I'm very good, team. How are we doing?
Good.
I'm hoping you can all hear me.
Doing
Yeah,
great.
we got
Perfect.
Did you get dried out, buddy?
Beautiful. Say again, sorry?
Did you get dried out? You had a wet couple of days there.
Yeah. I mean, it's been awful, to be honest. But it made for a great qualifying session, didn't it?
Yeah.
And I think all the fans have been in great spirits, which has been awesome. But walking in today when it was sunny, a little warmer, it's pretty breezy. It's not hot exactly, but it's a lot nicer than yesterday. Everyone's in a great mood. And I mean, the grandstands are packed. I'm in the pit lane right now, overlooking the start-finish straight and then the main grandstand that's opposite. And they're pretty packed already. People are really excited for this one.
Chris, quick question. We've had a lot of changes of PUs and hydraulics and all the rest of it. I think we're up on Charles Leclerc because simply he's at the back. But has anything overnight changed for anybody? Has anybody been penalized? I know people were going to the stewards yesterday. Has anybody else not where we expect them to be from post-qualifying?
No further penalties from post-qualifying. Yuki Tsunoda starts behind Charles Leclerc because he was actually the first driver this weekend to commit to taking a new power unit and having a back-of-the-grid start. And then because Leclerc qualified ahead of Tsunoda, seeing as they both had the same penalty, Leclerc starts ahead of Tsunoda. So that's why Leclerc will be 19th and Tsunoda 20th. There were a few investigations that went on overnight, mainly to do with actually the Ferrari drivers. I'm by their garages right now, Sainz and Leclerc. And they both were looked at for maybe driving unnecessarily slowly. Alex Albon was caught up in that as well. But in the end, the stewards cleared all 3 of them. So no penalties for those guys. And there was a few drivers that cut the odd chicane that they shouldn't have done or didn't rejoin the way the race director wants them to. So I think it was Gasly and Joe. Both of those, though, got a reprimand, which is the kind of standard punishment that is handed out. So that means that exactly. You can get away with that 3 times, and then you'll start getting proper penalties. So they are still where they expect to be. And the big one, I think, that makes that good and exciting is that the front row has still got Fernando Alonso on it, which is the thing that's got so many people excited walking in. It's incredible.
I was going to say, I mean, I was just, I was giddy yesterday seeing that. Fernando, is legendary. But honestly, I feel like he's finally got things put together. And of course, with the rain, it showed what he's capable of.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like showing up at a
And he was
football
on it,
game.
wasn't he?
Yeah, and it's like going to a football game and seeing Mahomes on the bench going, oh.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
Who's Mahomes?
And let's not, in case anybody out there is wondering, well, what's Leclerc doing just trying to beat Yuki Tsunoda? What difference does it make if you start at 19th or 20th? And Chris, you correct me on this if I'm wrong. I know there's been a lot of rain. I know the track has been washed. It's probably still green. But Leclerc will now start on what is ostensibly the clean side of the racetrack behind the pole sitter. That can make a big difference in his getaway and his early passes.
Absolutely, yeah. So Leclerc is on what's the pit lane side of the track. I'm actually right. You've timed this beautifully because I'm now looking across at Leclerc's grid slot and then Tsunoda's behind him. The cars aren't out of the pit lane yet, so just the mechanics getting set up. And Leclerc's grid slot is on the inside of the track, so it means he'll have the inside line into turn one. So that's obviously helpful. It means he's on the inside of Nicholas Latifi, who's 18th. But one thing I do want to mention is that the grid slot for Leclerc and also for Carlos Sainz right at the front of the grid is red. It's not white. It's been painted red with a Gilles Villeneuve tribute on it. So either side of the grid slot, it's just got a mention of remembering Gilles Villeneuve and the dates of his life. And instead of the normal white grid slot, you've got 2 red grid slots this weekend, which is a lovely touch because, of course, it was 40 years this year since we lost Gilles. So at the track that bears his name, they've put that tribute down on the grid.
And red for Ferrari, I presume.
Yes, indeed. Well, red for Ferrari and red for Canada.
Yes,
well, there's that.
Yeah, for the Maple Leaf. There's so many connections there, and that has to be the number one selfie spot in the track in Montreal. It's a really nice tribute.
Chris,
yeah, it's beautiful. It's on the start line. I'll just quickly mention as well. Yeah. Across the start line, it says Salut Gilles, because they always race across that every lap. But yeah, it's the first time I've ever seen a grid slot repainted, which is nice. I don't think Ferrari ideally wanted it to be so far back, but there we go. One at the front, one at the back.
Chris, it's always good to talk to you because I always love being in the press center like we were in Miami with you because the sages, the nobles, yourself, and a few others all sort of sit together. What is the conversation within the paddock and within the journalists as to this effectively mid-season rule change, potentially, because we haven't seen it come into effect yet, on the porpoising? What is everybody saying? I've heard what Helmut Marko said, and I'm not surprised. He says it's nonsense, and Verstappen's been vociferous as well. But they are going to do something, and not everybody's happy about it.
No, they're not. I did speak to Max Verstappen briefly about that, among other things, over the weekend or earlier in the weekend. I spoke to a few team members, and most are pretty annoyed because they feel like, well, it's clear what you do. If the car's undrivable, you then change your setup. We're talking about the ride height issue. Toto Wolff has even said that he admits Mercedes can still raise their car higher. I've seen a statistic or a printout, a trace from another team this morning that showed the ride heights from Baku, or what they claim were the ride heights from Baku, because of course I can't verify that. It's just what they tell me and show me. And by far the lowest car, by far, was the Mercedes. It had the lowest ride height by a long, long way. The other 9 you can almost group in the same gap that their Mercedes were below everybody else. So they're like, just, come and play where we're playing. Now, of course, that costs them a lot of performance. So it'll drop them a long way back. But that's the window, the aerodynamic window that these other teams are now working in. So that was one of the things that has come up. Most journalists are kind of, I guess, we don't really take opinions on it. We report what everyone says. But on the whole, it's kind of saying, well, they knew the rules at the start. Every team knew them. If your car is difficult to drive, if it's becoming dangerous, if your driver is turning around and saying, I can't see the braking point, I'm getting headaches, I'm not enjoying this, then either respect your driver and change it to make it more comfortable for them, or make changes to your car. But it shouldn't take the FIA to intervene. And I think the danger is what the FIA might do in terms of how do they police it? How do they measure it between different teams? Can they get a coverall solution that would fix things? Or will it be, what works for one team doesn't work for another? So I think most of the teams do seem to admit, okay, this isn't great. This is a problem that we should look to try and work out, but this isn't the way to go about it. So as far as I'm aware, having spoken to a couple of teams this morning as well, it's not being policed or implemented here. What they're doing here is kind of trying to monitor and understand what each team does and what they then might be able to set as a limit that's acceptable for the oscillating and the bouncing. But they haven't set any rules that will be implemented today. So don't expect to see anyone getting disqualified this afternoon for bouncing too much or anything like that.
All right, gentlemen. Well, let's stop and get a quick message in. And when we come back, we're going to play that exclusive interview that Chris did with Max Verstappen. Listen to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM. Back after these messages.
Hi Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
All right, we're going to go straight out to Chris just for him to give us a quick intro of this interview that he did with Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I had a chat with Max on Thursday afternoon when it was absolutely hammering it down. We had a huge storm hit the circuit and we were running for cover, trying to stay dry. And it was just to catch up with him about kind of how he's feeling about his title defense and where he is right now, because this season obviously started a bit trickily, but has been improving. So before he even took his first pole position here in Canada, we had a good chat about where he is right now and how he's feeling about how the season's going. Max, thanks very much for joining us here on Speed City Broadcasting and SiriusXM. People might be able to hear that it's raining pretty heavily in Montreal, but you've still got a smile on your face. And I imagine that's because, as you sit here now, 21 points clear in the Drivers' Championship, 34 points clear of the nearest non-Red Bull driver. You must be quite happy with how your title defense is going so far.
Yeah, I think it's been quite good. I mean, we of course won already quite a few races, so that's exactly what you want. I think for us, what is of course the most important is that we work on of course keep working on reliability, because that seems to be a big decider at the moment in the championship. And besides that, of course, working over the one lap performance, where I think we can still improve. But I think in general our race performances have been quite good.
Yeah, you mentioned reliability. Just how worrying were those early few races where you clearly had a quick car, but failing to finish two of them at the time felt like a big deal?
That wasn't great, but I think as a team, we understood very quickly how to fix these. But we always have to, stay on top of that, which is not always the easiest thing to do. But I think, we are so far, doing a good job. But it's still a very long season.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're only, 8 races in. We've got 14 still to go. But how much has the car improved over those first 8 races? Because you mentioned that the race pace particularly looks really, really good.
Yeah, and of course it's a bit race by race. Sometimes it looks a bit better than other races. But, it seems like we understand the car quite well in the race. We just need to have a bit of a better understanding in qualifying.
Yeah, well, it's still been close in qualifying. Charles just seems to be able to find that little bit extra at certain times. Where do you see the differences between maybe your car and his car?
It's difficult to tell. It's a completely different concept. It just seems like over one lap they really are able to, let's say, peak a bit more. It's of course always nice, to start up front, because it can make your race a lot easier. So that's what we'll try to work on.
Yeah, and you mentioned reliability, though, and you had your own struggles at the start of the year. Ferrari have had them more recently. You're asked in Baku about it and say, well, it happens. Do you have no sympathy for something like that? Because surely it's part of the whole package. If teams push the limits, they might not have a reliable car.
Well, it's not about sympathy. It's just that is racing, and these things can happen, and they happened to me in the past. It's just, as a team, you don't like it to happen, but you have to just work hard to try and understand and try to work on them not happening again.
Well, it's been 3 years since we were last here in Montreal. It's not given us the greatest weather as we hide in your tent to try and stay out of the storm right now. But by the time this runs, we'll be getting ready for the race. Hopefully you've qualified well. But as a venue, as a place, as a track, do you like this place? Have you missed it?
Yeah, I think it's a really nice place to be already in the city. Also, the fans are very passionate. There are always a lot of Ferrari fans around here, which I think is always nice to see. Of course, the history of Ferrari here is very big. Of course, with Gilles driving for Ferrari, that is still in a lot of people's minds around here in Canada as well. So, I always enjoyed coming here. So luckily we are back.
Hey, Bob Varsha, I saw you smiling when Max was talking. What were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking about Montreal, and I agree with them. It's a great place to go. I don't know that there's another city on the Formula One calendar that embraces the race. I know Austin fans are passionate about what goes on out of COTA, but in Montreal, it seems like every store window has a racing themed display. Every hotel lobby has either a race car or some other kind of exhibit. Every restaurant has a special menu or a special party weekend going on to celebrate the race. It's huge, and it can be hard to describe, but when you see it, you realize that this race means an awful lot to the people of Montreal. And listening to Max Verstappen talk about it makes me realize how much I miss not being there this year.
Yeah, I have to say that, I'm excited for Las Vegas and Miami and, potentially South Africa coming on board, but there is something to be said for history. It's not Monaco, obviously, but the history of this event and the fact that it's embedded into the city of Montreal, as Bob quite rightly describes, that is something really cool. And the Wall of Champions and all these things make it an event that, if you go there, it's like going to see your favorite rock group. You're there because you are amongst people that really want to be there, like you.
The thing that
and
I
as a
found,
racetrack, it's so cool because there's so little space. The track is narrow. The grandstands are right on the racetrack. You just watch all the corners here where the grandstands are. There's very little space for the edge of the racetrack to the first of these jam-packed grandstands. It makes it really exciting for the fans.
well, I hope the
I could probably give you a visual idea of that. I'm stood right in front of Fernando Alonso's pit box, right on the edge of the track, staring at a massive grandstand full of fans, which is, I'd say, slightly Ferrari dominant, but a lot of orange in there, which is partly Max, partly McLaren. But if I take a step, I can do 1-2 strides and I hit the wall. That's a tiny bit of grass that's between the edge of the track and the wall. And then it's less distance between that and the grandstand starting.
You didn't damage your front wing, did you?
Really up. No, just my toe. I've got dirty shoes. But there's so many fans up there now that are overlooking this grid. It really does add to the atmosphere.
We can hear
very,
them.
very cool.
Yeah, you can hear them.
Yeah.
They're cheering, but sadly not for me. It's for Will Buxton because he's waving at them.
Oh, there you go. Well, hey, but the other thing
they're on their feet because the grid's now open. They're loving it.
Montreal puts on a fantastic fan fest downtown, and I don't know if they had the opportunity this year with all the weather, but there were restaurants that weren't in the immediate downtown area that had set up like street cafes. They did all this. They just closed a couple of streets there, and there was live music, and there was even a blackjack and poker table casino set up, and folks were in there playing that out on the street. It was so much fun to watch and just be part of. Vendors, team merchandising, everything imaginable. I love what Austin does, but we might take a lesson from that spot.
Well, Austin has done all that before. I mean, we had Congress Avenue just full back in the first season, but
and us standing in the middle of it broadcasting.
Yeah.
Another thing I noticed during that interview when Max was talking about how he can't really judge the Ferrari because they're very different concepts, and he said that and a few other things that made me think he has taken a long look at that Ferrari, and maybe he doesn't want to single anything out, but he certainly sounded like he knew more than he was telling about the differences between his car and Charles Leclerc's.
And interesting, he said a completely different concept and that's a great thing about this season is that, I was looking at a tech piece on the brakes and how different everybody goes about the same problem.
Yeah, which is why we've seen so much unpredictability this season. So it's crazy. Yeah. Well, what's happening now, Chris? Give us your eyes and ears.
I am just watching the pit lanes open and cars are coming down to the pit lane. And Lewis Hamilton's car just got pushed back into the into the garage. Very briefly, he's come back out again. I'm not quite sure what it was that Mercedes wanted to change or check, but he rolled into the kind of grid slot and then got wheeled back into the garage for about 10 seconds. So he's heading back out. Lots of cars rolling through. Quite interestingly, a lot of them on brand new tyres as well, which seems strange, but because we had a washout yesterday, there's a lot of new tyres available that probably won't get used. I mean, most teams have 3 sets of brand new soft tyres because they didn't use them in qualifying, and they're only going to need 1, at most 2 sets if they even choose to use that at all. So, everyone heading out on brand new softs, and I've parked myself quite nicely. As you guys were talking about the atmosphere in Montreal, I mean, when you look at a grandstand, it's the variety of different team merchandise and hats and shirts. It's like every team is represented. There's McLaren, there's Ferrari, there's Red Bull, there's Mercedes. I can see some Aston Martin, quite a bit of Alpine, and they've managed to position themselves. They've done well. Very near Alonso's grid slot. They can't have known that was coming. But then there's a few Haas ones as well, and I'm right in the middle of row 3. Both Haas cars are here. Well, they're not on the grid yet, but what a performance from them to have row 3. The only team with 2 cars in the top 6 is Haas.
Oh, that's right. We had 5. Yeah. We had 5 different teams in the top 5. How crazy was that?
Top 7.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And just imagine a French team popular in Montreal. How can that be?
Sacre bleu.
Hey, speaking of tires, though, the fastest strategy, the quickest strategy, they're saying, is a medium followed by a hard. So yellow sidewalls followed by white. So that's kind of interesting. That nobody, very close behind it is the soft and the white. So it's interesting that they're still calling to me, the medium being the quickest race of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they think it's going to be just a little bit more durable. I mean, part of the concern, dare I say it, was that it might be a bit cooler today, and then the soft tire might grain, because you've got to remember, we had so much rain yesterday, loads of rain yesterday, that we ended up with hardly any grip on the track. It's gone back to a green track like FP1. And some teams actually did their long runs in FP1 thinking this might happen just to get some data like it. So with less grip on the surface, then the tire can slide around a little bit more. And if you do that on the soft tire and it was cooler, then the rubber tends to chunk up and break off, then stick to the tire again. So that's what we call graining. And then you lose grip. And there's actually a man in front of me who I might try and catch up with, who will know the answer to this. It's Mario Isola from Pirelli, a friend of the show. Mario, what do you think we're most likely to see in these conditions? It's warmer, but there's some wind around that makes it cool. Track temperature is probably not as high as you'd like. Soft or medium to start with, do you reckon?
I believe that the risk with the soft is to have some graining, and so probably most of the cars are starting on the medium compound that is giving you, the medium is more manageable, also with the rear overheating, and with this condition is probably better. We have a green track, and they have to consider that.
Yeah, I'll just repeat everything you said from yesterday on the show. But what about the hard tire to start with? Do you think some out of position cars might try that?
That's a good option, especially for the drivers starting from the back, like Charles, for example. With the hard, you have a very consistent tire. You have the flexibility to decide your strategy if there is a safety car or any other disruption during the race. Most of the teams decided to keep 2 sets of hard in their allocation. So that's really interesting for the race strategy.
Yeah, we'll look out that stuff, because if there is a safety car, we get a few here. But if you're a betting man, then who's leading at the end of turn one? This is a question I'm going to ask a lot of people. If you're a betting man, who's leading at the end of the first lap, shall we say? Fernando Alonso or Max Verstappen?
Wow, that's a very difficult question. I believe Fernando has a very, very good opportunity, but he has also to think of the championship and try to get some points at home. So quite stressful for him.
Yeah, it will be. Mario Isola, thank you very much. The head of car racing for Pirelli.
Brilliant.
And yeah, he's correct that Max will probably be a bit wary. Fernando was warning him yesterday in the press conference that he was going to come down the inside into turn one.
He did, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, it's coming. Now, he did similar in Qatar last year when he was starting up front, and he didn't actually do it. He was kind of, again, it was like a shot across the bows to see if any driver would react differently if he did get a chance, but he doesn't do anything silly. Fernando is a smart driver. But if the door's open, I think Max knows Fernando's going to be coming.
Oh, that
He's
is
also
awesome.
He's a very difficult guy to pass if he gets ahead.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's get a quick break in. We need to do this real quick. And when we come back, we'll have more from Chris in Montreal, and we'll be back after these messages.
Hi, this is Karan Chandok, and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
CrowdStrike presents Driven in 60. Our digital world is more than just interconnected, it's interdependent. And because of that, security is a top concern for every organization. The Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team knows they're a potential target for a host of digital attacks, which is why they leverage the CrowdStrike Falcon platform to deploy end-to-end security solutions. CrowdStrike revolutionized cybersecurity by harnessing the speed and power of the cloud to identify and stop the most sophisticated cyber attacks. Our cloud-native Falcon platform protects and defends organizations against increasingly complex threats, so you can have the peace of mind to focus on your business momentum, not what's trying to stop it. That's protection that powers you. To learn more and to try CrowdStrike Falcon free today, visit crowdstrike.com/XM. And congrats to CrowdStrike CEO George Kurtz.
Yeah.
He won the race this past week,
Found that top
Saturday.
step.
Yeah,
He walks the walk and talks the talk.
he absolutely is a full-blown racer for sure.
Racing at BIR with the GT America series.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Nice. How cool is that?
I always like that, I have to say.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, you know, that,
CEO of a publicly traded company.
that'd probably make coming to the office a lot easier to know you got a cool boss like that.
Yeah.
You'd have something to talk about.
Well,
for
speaking
sure.
of bosses, I've got the boss at Alpine right here. I've got the CEO, Laurent Rossi, with me. Laurent, I mean, we're looking at Fernando Alonso's car. Let's look in front of us. No car in front of you. Clean run to turn one. How good does this seem?
It's nice. I like the perspective from here. We want us to get used to it. So we've been building that patiently. It's nice. Obviously, the qualification was a little bit different. We managed to get a bit of an edge, but we still have decent pace on the dry. So hopefully we convert that into big points here.
Well, you were so hard to overtake in Baku, your cars. Both of them were.
Yeah.
Will it be similar here today? I mean, if Fernando gets to the front, do you think it's going to be hard to pass?
It's the same car, so it's going to be fast. We've changed a little bit the trade-off towards a bit less speed because it was hurting the tires. We had to manage it too much. I would say realistically, the top 4 teams are faster than us. But 2 cars out of the 4 have to come back up the grid. So we have a good chance of staying in this, let's say, top 6, which is nice.
And I mean, Fernando, as it stands, we know what he can do. We know how good he is. But I mean, he's out of contract at the end of the year. I mean, this is a great advertisement to try and get you to give him a new deal, isn't it?
We cross that bridge when we get there, if you don't mind.
I bet he'll come up to you after the race if he's on the podium. But good luck today, Laurent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Laurent Rossi there. He's smiling. He's loving being at the front here.
Yeah.
Great.
Loving the view. Well, speaking of Fernando at the front, we need to go down the grid. Bob, you want to take us through that?
Sure. Everybody, take a deep breath. Here we go. Starting on the pole for the second time this year, 15th of his career, Max Verstappen for Red Bull Racing. His last 10 pole positions have produced 8 victories and 2 crashes with Lewis Hamilton. Hold that thought. Starting next to him, the sensation of qualifying, Fernando Alonso in the first of the Alpines. It's been 156 races since the last time Fernando started on the front row, back in 2012, as we mentioned.
Wow.
And it's a first for the team, going back to their original name, Lotus, back in 2013, when Kimi Räikkönen did it. And by the way, Alonso turns 41 next month. Moving back to row 2, Carlos Sainz, waving the flag for Ferrari. We have 2 Spaniards in the top 3 for the first time ever in Formula One. They were extremely quick in Sector 1 was Carlos, but he lost out off the final corner. You probably saw it if you watched qualifying. The back end stepped out, and he lost about a half a second by his estimation. Otherwise,
well,
Carlos might have
if
been
we
on
just
pole.
stop you at Carlos, because he's right behind Max Verstappen, and I've got Max's boss, Christian Horner, here. Christian,
Go for it.
bit of a different grid to usual. To your left is Fernando Alonso, who you know him very well. What are you expecting from today?
Yeah, look, he's going to go full attack, so I'm sure he's going to be in good shape. So, yeah, he did a great job yesterday, but we just got to focus on our start, get a good, clean start, and try and get away.
I was going to say, we're trying to talk it up, but if Fernando doesn't get in the mix with Max, surely you've got the car to walk away and win this time. You look very quick on the long run.
No, it's going to be a long, tough race, and strategy is crucial, but let's see.
And Charles starting at the back, this could be a very big day in the championship, though, couldn't it?
They're all big days.
Well, we look forward to see how it goes. I'll let you go. Greg Maffei is here from Liberty Media, who, has a bit more power than I have, doesn't he? So I'll let him get on with chatting to him. Sorry, Bob, carry on.
No, that's quite all right. And here's to Christian Horner. I hope your pit stops are quicker than they were in Baku, at least for Sergio. Anyway, outside of row 2 is 7-time world champ Lewis Hamilton for Mercedes. 4th is his best qualified position of the year, although shaded by that controversy over the porpoising. Moving back to row 3, Kevin Magnussen for Haas. The first time Haas has been up there sharing row 3. The team essentially was second only to Alonso in terms of surprise. And that's their best performance, both as an individual car or a 2-car team ever in Formula One. Next to him, of course, Mick Schumacher. There's never been a podium for Haas in 130 Formula One races. Could this be the day? A lot of pressure on Michael Schumacher's son to secure his future after a long series of crashes. On to row 4, Esteban Ocon. We talk about Fernando Alonso being up there P2. His teammate, Ocon, is P7 for Alpine, his second best qualifying of the year. And those cars are really handling well because they are nowhere near the quickest in a straight line. Outside, George Russell in the second Mercedes-Benz, who gambled on slicks at the end of Q3. The only guy to do it. He went off at the second turn, and he's out-qualified by Lewis Hamilton for the first time in 4 races. On row 5, Danny Ricciardo for McLaren. Only the second time he's out-qualified his teammate this year. Next to him, Another surprise in qualifying, rookie Guan Yu Zhu in the Alfa Romeo, who reached Q3 for the first time in his career and out-qualified his more heralded teammate, Valtteri Bottas. And Bottas starts right behind him in P11 inside row 6. And it's been forever since Bottas has been that far back in Montreal. To the outside of Bottas is Alex Albon, doing a great job in the Williams. A lot of rumors that he will have a new teammate in Oscar Piastri and a new powertrain from Renault next year. That story yet to be told, but that's the best qualifying run for a Williams this season. Row 7 to the inside, Sergio Perez, who crashed in Q2, leaving both Red Bull and Ferrari with just one car up front. Next to him, another disappointed driver, Lando Norris in the second McLaren. He had some power issues during qualifying, and the result is his worst starting position of the season. Back on row 8, Pierre Gasly for AlphaTauri out in Q1 for the third time in 9 races this year. But the good news is he is confirmed to race with AlphaTauri next year. Next to him, 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel in the first of the Aston Martins. Bitterly disappointed. He was third in that wet free practice 3 on Saturday morning, but knocked out in Q1. Only the second time in 11 trips to Montreal that Sebastian Vettel has started anywhere but the top 3. Moving back.
I'm just going to interrupt you there, Bob, I'm afraid. Because normally you're at the stage, row 8, row 9, where sometimes we're talking about Haas. Not anymore. Row 3, good to Steiner. I mean, how does this feel to be up here?
I didn't hear you. Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
How excited are you to be on the 3rd row?
Very excited. I mean, you know, it's we were here before a few times, but having 2 cars on the 3rd row is the best qualifying result for the team ever. You know, so it feels great. Obviously, it's a lot of pressure when you're up here, but that's part of it. That's the nice pressure. You know, when you've got pressure because you're last, it's bad. But if we are here, it's pressure. A lot of things can go wrong, but a lot of things can go right. So hopefully they go all right.
Well, how does it change things to have both cars up here for you? Because sometimes you're focusing on one car chasing big points and one car outside the top 10. So how big a challenge is it to have both?
I mean, it's fantastic to have both because then you've got 2 opportunities, you know. So that is how I see it. Before we always, as you said, sometimes you had only 1 car here, and now we have 2, and it's double the opportunity, and that is how I feel about it.
And what about the car pace then? Because you've got a car that is clearly quick, but not always starting so far up. Can it stay here? What's your realistic targets today?
Realistic is keeping them both in the top 10. You know, which position, you know, further up, better it is, and more I like it. But it's, we need to be realistic. There's quite a few good cars behind us for one or the other reason, and they will attack. But hopefully, when you are starting up front, normally it's better to keep people behind than get ahead of them. So we try to our best to get the best position home at the end of the race.
And just finally, any word that you had to give to the drivers about giving each other space? I mean, they are next to each other, and like you say, starting so well.
No, we spoke with them, both with them together, obviously, with the race engineer, and just said, let's stay calm like we did yesterday. If we stay calm, we can get a good race home, you know. And everybody seems to be in the moment pretty calm about everything. So I hope we can do it also the first 3-4 laps.
Well, Netflix filming you, Gene's behind you. You must have told him you're going to be rock stars today, didn't you?
I didn't speak with him about that one yet, because otherwise, if I don't do what I say, he said, why did you tell me that?
Well, hopefully it does go that well. Good. Thank you very much. There we go. He's a happy man. Gene Haas is just having a look around right now. Gene, actually, I'll grab you very quickly. SiriusXM. I mean, look at your 2 cars here on the 3rd row. This is great.
Yeah, no, 5th and 6th. It's I don't think we ever did that before, so it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, what are you hoping for from today? Just a nice, clean race, a few points. It's nice to have such a competitive team this year, isn't it?
Well, we know the guys up front will be in front of us, so that we shouldn't have any problems running into them. So hopefully, if we can just stay ahead of the pack and back of us, get a little bit of distance in those first few laps, and then have everything kind of be quiet for about half the race, we should do good.
Yeah, it should be good. And how much are you enjoying this season? Because you stuck with the team through some tough times, knowing that it would hopefully pay off.
They're all tough years, so you know, it's just a matter of trying to juggle things and get it to work. So, you know, it looks good today. Let's just see where we finish.
Well, good luck, Gene. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Gene Haas there on the grid. He's not always on the grid, so good to grab him.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Let's pick up the grid at row 9, which is all native Montrealers. To the inside, Lance Stroll for Aston Martin, who has never gotten out of Q1 in his hometown race. And outside, Nick Latifi for Williams, who admits that his job is at risk for next season. And on the last row, the two drivers who took basically completely new power units for this race, Charles Leclerc for Ferrari, Yuki Tsunoda for AlphaTauri. But we should note, history tells us that points and even podiums are possible. I'll be right with you. From the last row of the grid. It's been done before. Keep an eye on Charles Leclerc.
All right, well, gentlemen, let's pause there, and when we come back, we're going to get Chris's race strategies because he writes that up for Formula1.com. We'll get his take on all that. You're listening to Speed City. Back after these messages.
Hello, I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
The Speed City F1 pre-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. Don't forget that XM. All right, Chris Medland, I know you were down there in Montreal. I say down there, up there in Montreal. But if you grab anybody, just let us know. But we wanted to talk about the race strategies that you had posted on Formula1.com.
Yeah, as we were mentioning earlier, I think, as Mario Isola said as well, most likely to be a medium tyre start for most drivers, running to about between laps 22 and 28, I think, of this, what is a 70-lap race. So it's a lot of laps. And then from there, switch to the hard, run to the end. You could start on the soft and try and get a better launch and get some extra grip in the first stint, but with high fuel, with low grip, you might have some graining that makes that tough. And then you end up with a long final stint on the hard tyre. So I think that'd be a bit of a gamble for anyone who does that. The other option is for someone further back to start on the hard tyre and run long. See how far you can get. If you get to about lap 40, switch to the mediums. If there's some safety cars that you can take advantage of, then make a pit stop that'll be quicker. Less than 10 seconds to make a pit stop here under safety car because it's a short pit lane. It's alongside a high-speed straight where drivers then are losing a lot of time if they're still on track during a safety car period. And then, they'd be looking to switch to the medium on about lap 40, or if they get close to lap 50, could try the softs. Now, I'm going to see if I can be a little bit cheeky in a second and grab Toto Wolff, who is just chatting to another TV company at the moment, and he's watching Lewis Hamilton climb into the car, which, as a funny aside, there was a guy holding a cardboard sign in front of Lewis's car. It's like a bit of a PR stunt. Man with sign, I think he's known as on social media. And his first sign said, "Where are the drivers peeing?" ? It's a good question. And the second one said, "Save the whales, stop porpoising." So that's how he was trying to make his point. But
is he for hire?
See if I can grab Toto Wolff very, very briefly. Toto, we've got Lewis Hamilton here, fourth on the grid, and I've never seen him so happy with a fourth place before.
Yeah, I think that shows that he feels more at ease with the car, which is good. And I think yesterday in the heavyweight conditions, we were competitive.
Now, it's dry today, though. I mean, where do you see yourself stacking up? You have an Alpine in front that normally you'd be quicker than, but not easy to overtake.
No, not easy to overtake. I guess we have the pace to get them, but we are still lacking to the Red Bulls, and this is the main target.
Yeah, I mean, from here, what are we looking at? Sort of top 5, top 6, do you be happy with? Or, when you start this far up, are you looking at the podium?
Yeah, I'm never happy with the top 5. But this is realistically where we are at the moment. So we need to regain land, and that's not going to happen from one race to the other.
And just very briefly, even though it's a complicated topic, but we've had a technical directive from the FIA, a lot of talk about what we do with ride heights, the floor. Where do we stand right now? Do you see any progress? Is this going to be a tough topic between the teams for a while?
Yeah, of course, everybody wants to protect the competitive position, but I don't think this is a political situation. It's a driver safety and driver health issue. And whatever the solution is, I think the FIA is going to come up with something good.
Okay, well, we'll look to see how that goes, and we'll look to see how you do today. Thank you very much, Toto, for your time. Toto Wolff there, who, as I said, is hoping some changes are made to those regulations. But from what I saw earlier today, Mercedes do run their car the lowest, so they've got the most space to raise the ride height.
Huh. Yeah, that was nice, Toto. He sounded nice and calm, actually.
That was interesting.
I was going to say, because he's starting so far up, but with a lot of cars further back, Ferrari and Red Bull have had bigger trouble than Mercedes this weekend.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear Toto Wolff say he has confidence in the FIA, considering their history.
Yeah, on this topic, Bob. On this topic.
This week.
Don't overextend the accolade there.
Winds blowing east.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Oh,
Hey, we're definitely going to have to talk about that new rule and those limits in the post-race show. How's that?
yeah. I mean, unfortunately, they haven't finished it all, but there's still plenty to talk about because, I mean, it's we need to clarify some things, you know, that it potentially really could just be a level playing field across the board and not really affect any team specifically. But we'll talk about that in the post-race show. Let's see.
Yeah, we should get a bit of time as long as they don't all fly out first thing tonight. It's always the aim of these drivers and team bosses. But one thing that we shouldn't have any worries about is long interruptions here, because I tell you, the weather is gorgeous now. It's a bit windy, but I don't think we have to worry about any downpours like we have for the rest of the weekend. So anyone who was worried that they were going to have a long day in front of the TV or in front of the radio, you should be good.
Have the FIA put out any edicts out to the groundhogs about when they can cross?
No, sadly not. They just black flag them if they do it at the wrong time. But yeah, we get a lot of the groundhogs around here. Genuinely, I've been trackside a couple of times, and you do see them they just seem so chilled. They're kind of used to it. And I think because these cars aren't screaming V8s or V10s anymore that thunder quite the way they used to, it doesn't really warn them in the same way. So they're just a bit more relaxed.
Yeah, watching one yesterday, it looked like he was looking at the car, knowing when to cross. I was like,
smarter than frogs.
Yeah, and he knew it was a Ferrari, and it was celebrating Gilles. So, yeah, he knew the time.
Anything to get on camera.
There you go.
Yeah.
Although I think one has been hit this weekend, which is not a pleasant thought, but there it is.
No, I imagine at least one has. And I mean, it happens everywhere though. We had Sergio Perez hit a pigeon pretty firmly in Monaco during practice there. So, you know, you get wildlife on the track and they just can't move quickly enough. But fingers crossed, no incidents with that today. Obviously for the safety of the wildlife, and it would just be bad luck for anyone who were unfortunate enough to hit it, because it will damage your car as well. So hopefully no such issues during the race.
My first Formula One race, Stefan Johansson in a McLaren hit a deer in Austria.
Ooh.
And that was a world championship level mess, I can tell you.
Bob, I hit a deer in my Corvette one time, and I scooped him up like a spatula and spun him off into the weeds and never saw from him again. But my low front of the car just scooped him up and flipped him out.
Did he
didn't even
deer
offer
in
him
the
a ride
headlights?
home?
Did you invite him to dinner?
He was gone. He took off.
Somehow I doubt that, but okay.
Hey, Jonathan, we were talking earlier about the back of the grid, but that's going to be one of the most exciting things to watch is Leclerc coming from the back and the other guys, too.
Well, to be honest, that was something I wanted to talk about, was because Aston Martin were way more competitive than their qualifying position, and Vettel particularly was really, really strong, very disappointing his qualifying. He just didn't get it right. I listened to an interview he did, but Vettel's definitely one to watch. Stroll at home is one to watch. No question, Gasly disappointed again. He was faster than that. All through the weekend, he's been quick. And obviously, Charles Leclerc is purposely at the back because of the new parts he's put on the car. And Norris. So watch Sergio Perez, Norris, Leclerc, Gasly and Vettel, Stroll, all coming from the back. And I'd like to see maybe one of them trying that hard-tired strategy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, this just,
I think you're likely to see that.
Yeah.
This just parallels Tiger Woods, behind the pack at in the ninth hole and watching it. It's one of the most exciting scenarios for me to watch in golf, to see what he does. And this, I'm going to apply that to Leclerc.
No, it's good.
This year.
I agree.
This time.
That's Sunday.
We know where he belongs.
Yeah.
We know what he's capable of. Watch this.
Well, Chris has just described the strategy, but as everybody who's ever watched a Canadian Grand Prix will know, that first corner comes up so quick and is so tricky that you can easily, jostling for position, find yourself out of position, inside or out at turn one, causing what we've seen over the years, a big off. And if you play it right, if you're Charles Leclerc or Vettel, and you tiptoe through turn 1 and 2, you can find yourself in the top 10 within a couple of laps.
Absolutely. Compounding that turn 1 and the usual situation there is that it's basically a clean track. It's green because of all the rain.
Right.
And so much has been washed off. Even the support races are not putting down that much that's going to drastically help these guys.
And let's not forget, this is so important for Leclerc and Ferrari because they are completely on the back foot. We've done a complete flip-flop with the points now, with Leclerc and Ferrari ahead. Now they're behind.
Bob, you had a point, I think if you can remember it from yesterday, the flip-flop point difference from where they started versus Red Bull.
Was it 127-point swing, Red Bull versus Ferrari?
Wow.
Since Australia, I believe. It's been phenomenal. Of course, we can count up the victories, the way Max Verstappen has been winning races, and Ferrari has been suffering various maladies. Yeah. In fact, I'm surprised that Ferrari's not, well, I can't say they haven't considered it. Maybe they have, starting Charles Leclerc from a pit lane just to avoid those critical first turns. They call them the Senna complex, turns 1 and 2. I think I might wait and let the whole field sort itself out and then start picking people off. But who knows? Yuki Tsunoda could do it as well. And let's not forget the history of this race since the evolution of the safety car has been extraordinary. There's only been 2 in the last 5 races here in Montreal, but there have been as many as 6 going back through the first couple of decades of this millennium. The safety cars have been a big factor here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a good point you make about starting from the pit lane, but I think part of Ferrari's thought is they're so quick, and with some of the cars that are ahead of them, maybe you do take it easy through the first couple of corners, but while other stuff is kicking off, you want to be there just to pick off a couple of drivers, ideally on that first lap. Because it's green, because it's risky, there's stuff is likely to go on. I imagine you'll see Leclerc not bombing into turn 1, making moves, or turn 2, but they'd be hoping to make up a couple of spots by the end of the first lap, just from other bits of incident and accident that are close enough to take advantage of. Interesting you mentioned about Aston Martin, though. I'm really intrigued to see how they go, because they did look very quick on Friday, but then a rival team told me they think they took all the fuel out of that car on Friday, just trying to put on a bit of a show with Lance Stroll at his home race. The team's been struggling a bit, and that they were kind of surprisingly quick because of the way they ran their sessions and even ran in FP3.
Hey, Chris,
so
Chris, I'm
whether that's true or not,
we are out of time. Give us your predictions.
It's sadly a Max Verstappen win, but I'm going to go with Fernando Alonso leading at the end of the first lap, which will make it exciting.
Jonathan?
Alonso to win.
Yeah. Bob?
Verstappen, Sainz, Alonso.
Les?
Max, Sainz, Hamilton.
Okay.
Double points for Haas.
Oh, yeah, double. I'm going to say.
podium for Haas.
That's what I was just going to say. K-Mag on the podium as a prediction, but actually I'd love to see Schumacher have that spot. All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. Of course, don't forget we have a full 1-hour post-race show right after the race. Stay right here for the race coverage from the BBC.